There's a stretch of high ground above the Missouri River up on the northern plains where the grass grows in circles. You can stand on that bank and count 40 of them, sometimes 60 or 70. Each one is a shallow dish pressed into the prairie, 30 or 40 feet across and knee-deep in the middle, and the grass inside grows taller and greener than the grass around it. People drive that gravel road every day of their lives and see a bumpy pasture. What you are looking at is a town. Every one of those dishes is the floor of a house. Families lived in them through winters that ran 30 degrees below zero with a wind on top of it, and they lived in them warm, not surviving. Warm in shirt sleeves, with a fire in the middle of the floor you could cover with your hat. Now, you would think all that dirt is what did the work, but it is not, and I believed it was for a lot of years. Stay with me to the end of this one, because the reason those houses held their heat has almost nothing to do with the dirt on the roof. It comes down to one thing about the doorway, and that doorway does the exact opposite of what a doorway is supposed to do. Once you see it, you will understand why a hole in the ground beat every cabin ever built on that prairie. I am Wes Kingfisher. I am 64 years old. I am of Cherokee heritage, and my grandmother Ada raised me in the hills of eastern Oklahoma, on the same few acres of oak and hickory where I still live today. She taught me the plants and the kitchen. My grandfather and my uncles taught me the woods, and 40 years on the powwow trail and at gatherings all across Indian country taught me the rest, from the northern plains down to the desert southwest. I have slept a winter in a teepee at 20 below and been warm. I have crawled into an earth lodge in January, and I have cut into a bank with my own 2 hands and lived out of the hole I made. The old ones never wrote any of this down, so listen close. Let me be straight with you about that title, because I do not sell people fairy tales. There was a fire in there. This was not a magic warm hole in the ground. But there was no stove, no chimney pipe, no furnace, no propane. And the fire was small enough that a whole winter's wood came off the driftwood piles on the riverbank. The building did the work. The fire only topped it off. And I will say one other thing before we put a shovel in the ground. There was a great deal more inside those lodges than engineering. There were things that belonged to those families and to their ceremonies. And that part is not mine to hand out, and it is not what this is. What I can teach you is how the building works, and that part the old ones would want you to have. Here is where the modern way goes wrong. We do not build shelter anymore. We build a box full of air, and then we spend all winter paying to heat the air, and air holds almost no heat in it at all. Our people did not heat air. They started somewhere warmer, and then they stopped the heat from leaving. And the biggest place heat leaves any building on this earth is the exact thing I told you to wait for. Hold on to that. Before we start digging, let me tell you where all of this comes from. I finally sat down and wrote it out, and it is called The Native American Way. 101 remedies, skills, and recipes that kept my people alive for 10,000 years. Ada's plant knowledge and her kitchen, and the skills the elders of Indian country handed me around 1,000 fires, put down plain so a person can go do them. The backyard plants, the teas and the salves, the wild foods and when to gather them, fire and water and shelter, and how to put a whole winter of food up. Right now it is $17, marked down from $47. $17. That is about 1 tank of gas for the way an entire people stayed alive on this land. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you are watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. Now, before we move 1 shovelful of anything, you have to understand what the ground already is, because the ground is not cold. That is the first thing everybody has backward. Dig down in your own yard on the worst morning of January, and you will hit frost. In most of the middle of this country that frost runs down a foot or two. Way up north on those plains, it can run 3 or 4 feet down. That is the frost line, and every county in America has one, and your building inspector knows the number by heart. But here's what happens underneath it. Below that frost line, the ground stops paying any attention to the weather. It settles in at right around the average air temperature for that place across the whole year. All 4 seasons average together. Across most of this country, that is somewhere between 50 and 55 degrees. Up on the northern plains, it is a little cooler. Call it high 40s, 50 degrees down there, all winter, whether it is snowing or not. So look at the arithmetic our people were working with. It is 30 below zero on top of the ground. It is right around 50 degrees a few feet under it. That is an 80-degree head start, and it is free. And it renews itself every single day forever. 80 degrees before you build one thing. You already know this in your body, by the way. You have felt it. Walk into a cave in August and it is cold. Walk into that same cave in February and it feels warm on your face. Go down into an old storm cellar. Stand in a spring house. Put your hand on the wall of a well pit. It never changes. And that is the whole reason your grandmother kept her potatoes in her jars down there. And there's a second gift on top of the first one. Earth is heavy, and heavy things hold heat. That is what mass does. It does not just sit at 50 degrees, it stores warmth and it gives it back slow. When a cold snap rolls through, it takes weeks for that cold to work its way down through 4 feet of dirt, and by the time it gets there, the snap is long over. The ground smooths out the weather the same way a big cast iron pot smooths out a fire. The old ones did not have a thermometer, and they did not need one. They lived on that ground. They watched where the frost quit. They watched where the snow melted first, and they watched what the badgers and the ground squirrels did in November. Everything alive on that prairie that intended to see spring went down, so they went down too. But a hole in the ground will also kill you faster than the weather will, and there are 3 ways it does it. So the next part is picking the ground, and this is where beginners lose the whole project. Start with which way it faces. You want a slope that faces south. In the wintertime, the sun runs low across the southern sky all day long, so a south face catches sunlight on it from morning until evening, even in December. A north face in January never sees the sun at all, and it will be frozen solid when the south face is thawing. That one choice is worth more than any amount of extra digging. Next, get out of the bottom. Cold air is heavy, and every clear night it slides downhill like water and pools up in the draws in the creek bottoms. If you dig in the bottom, you have dug a bowl inside a bowl, and the coldest air on the whole hillside will be sitting in it every morning. Get up on the shoulder of the slope instead. Now, water. Water is the thing that ruins these. Dig yourself a test hole first, 3 or 4 feet down, right where you are thinking about it. Leave it open overnight. Go back in the morning. If there is water standing in the bottom, you have found the water table and you need to move uphill and try again. Do that before you dig anything big, because a pit that fills with water in a February rain is not a shelter. It is a cold bath, and cold water pulls the heat out of a person about 25 times faster than cold air does. Then the soil itself. Take a handful of the dirt out of your test hole, wet it a little, and squeeze it. If it packs into a ball and holds together, that is loam or clay, and it will stand up as a wall. If it falls apart through your fingers like sugar, that is sand, and sand will not hold a face. Sand caves. You can still build there, but you have to build a full timber wall, and you cannot lean on the dirt at all. Look at the wind, too. Put the solid uphill side of your pit toward whichever way the winter wind comes from, and put your entrance on the sheltered side. Around here, that is a north wind, so I dig with my back to the north and keep it close to what you need: wood, water, and a way in and out that you can walk in the dark. Our people put their lodge villages up on the terraces above the river. high enough to stay out of the spring flood, close enough to carry water and driftwood up the bank. Nobody built a beautiful lodge a half-mile from the wood. 2 more things, and they are both on you. Call 811 before you dig, anywhere in this country, and give them 3 business days. That is free, and there are gas lines and power lines and water lines underground you would never guess, and know whose ground it is. I teach skills, not trespassing. All right, now we dig. You're going down 3 to 4 feet. 3 to 4 feet, not 15. I know it is tempting to go deeper because deeper is warmer, but you have to be able to climb out of it in the dark. You have to be able to move air through it, and every foot down is a great deal more dirt to move by hand. Make it round. Round is not decoration. A round wall of earth pushes against itself all the way around and holds the same way a stone arch holds. Corners are where a dirt wall fails, so we do not give it any corners. Round also gives you the most floor for the least wall, which means the least surface for your heat to leak through. Slope the walls out a little as they come up so the top of the pit is wider than the bottom. In good clay, you can get away with less slope. In loose ground, you need more. If you ever see a crack open up parallel to the top edge of your wall, stop, get out, and cut it back further. That crack is the wall telling you what it is about to do. While you're down there, cut a shelf into the wall all the way around, about 18 inches up off the floor and deep enough to lie on. 18 inches up. That is your sleeping bench, and it is not a comfort item. Warm air rises and cold air settles, so the air at your floor is always the coldest air in the building, and the air 18 inches up is meaningfully warmer. Every night you spend on the floor instead of the bench, you are sleeping in the cold pocket you built for yourself. Do not haul that dirt away. All of that dirt you just moved is a wall you did not have to dig for. Pile it up in a ring around the rim of your pit and pack it down. Now you have 3 feet of depth plus 2 feet of berm, and you are standing in a 5-foot wall, and you only dug 3 feet of it. Now here's the part where I need you to actually listen to me, because this is the one that hurts people. The dirt is never the roof. Never. Earth over your head has to be carried by wood, and the wood has to be sound, and it has to be sized like you mean it. People die under collapsed dugouts in this country every few years, and it is almost always somebody who scooped out a nice cave in a bank and did not put a frame in it. Wet dirt weighs something like 100 pounds a cubic foot. A foot of soil over a 10 by 10 roof is 5 tons sitting over you while you sleep. So we frame it. The frame our people used on those planes is beautiful, and it is simple, and it has not been improved on much. 4 posts go in the middle of the floor, set in a square, sunk in real post holes and tamped tight. Cut them with a fork or a crotch at the top, because that fork is what holds the next piece. Those 4 posts are the tall part of your ceiling, and the ceiling only needs to be high enough for a person to stand in the middle. Across the tops of those 4 posts, you lay 4 heavy beams, 1 on each side, making a square frame up in the air. Those are your stringers, and they carry everything. Then you run rafters. One end sits up on that square frame in the middle. The other end comes down and rests on the top of your berm, out at the rim, and you go all the way around like the spokes of a wheel. Now you have a low dome with a flat spot in the middle and a square hole up in the center of that flat spot. Leave that hole. That is a smoke hole, and we will come back to it. Around the outside, in that gap between the top of your berm and the ground, you stand shorter poles up on a leaning against the rafter ends, packed tight side by side like a picket fence. Those are your leaners, and they close the wall. Use green wood if you can get it, because green wood bends before it breaks, and it does not check and split like seasoned wood does. Bark side out. Lash it or peg it, and go heavier than you think you need to every single time. And notice the shape of what you just built. It is low, and it is round, and it is close over your head. That is not because they could not build tall. It is because you do not heat a floor. You heat a volume of air, and a low dome is the least amount of outside surface wrapped around the most amount of usable room. Every extra foot of ceiling you add is more air to warm and more skin to lose it through. Build low. So now you have a bowl in the ground with a wooden lid on it. And if you stopped right here and shoveled dirt straight onto that wood, you would have a cold, leaky house. And you would spend the rest of the winter believing the old ways do not work. What goes on next is where the whole thing is won. And it is also where I keep telling you the answer is not the dirt. Here's the order from the inside out, and each layer has one job. First, right on top of your rafters, you lay a mat of small stuff, willow shoots, split saplings, cane, whatever grows thin and straight where you are. Lay it crossways over the poles until you cannot see daylight. That is your lathe, and its only job is to hold up the next layer. Second, and this is the layer that matters, you pile on grass. Dry prairie grass, reeds, cattail leaves, bark, straw, pine needles, whatever you've got in quantity, and you do not sprinkle it. You want a foot of it packed and even, a full foot of grass. Third, you cut sod, squares of it with the roots and the soil still on, and you lay those squares grass side down, dirt side up, overlapping like shingles from the bottom edge upward, grass side down. The roots knit into each other over one season, and that whole roof turns into one piece. Fourth, you throw loose earth over the sod and pack it and let the grass grow up through it in the spring. Now, here's the thing that took me years to get straight in my own head, and it is the reason those grass circles above the Missouri are still teaching people something. The dirt is not your insulation. Dirt is heavy, and dirt conducts. Pack 3 feet of bare dirt on that roof with no grass under it, and you have built a very expensive cold sink over your head. What actually stops heat is still air that is held in place so it cannot move and carry warmth away with it. That is all insulation has ever been, in any material anybody has ever used. Fur does it, wool does it, feathers do it, and a foot of packed dry grass does it about as well as anything you can buy, because every stem in there is holding a little pocket of air that cannot go anywhere. A foot of grass will beat 3 feet of dirt. Not close. Beat it. So what is the dirt doing? 4 jobs, and they are all real. It is the raincoat so the grass underneath stays dry, and dry grass insulates while wet grass does nothing. It is the windbreak, because wind blowing through loose grass strips the heat out of it. It is the weight that holds the whole roof down in a plains wind, and it is mass, that same slow, patient mass we talked about, evening out the swings. Grass to hold the heat, dirt to hold the grass. Get that order backward and you will freeze in a house that took you 2 weeks to build. And I will tell you now, you can lay every one of those layers perfect and still throw an entire winter away through one opening in this building. It is not the one you're thinking of. Hold on a little longer. Now let us go back up to that hole in the middle of the roof, because the smoke hole is not just a hole, it is the throttle on the whole building. Make it about 2 feet across, 2 feet, and put your hearth a little off to one side of it rather than dead center underneath, because you want the smoke to have to lean over and go up rather than shoot straight through, which drags too much heat out with it. Over the top of it, you set a screen. Our people used a hide stretched on a frame, or a woven mat, or on the plains sometimes a bull boat, one of those round hide boats, turned upside down over the hole, and you move it with the wind. You slide it around so it sits on the windward side and blocks the wind from blowing straight down the hole into your fire. What that does is make the wind pull the smoke up and out instead of pushing it down. Same reason a chimney has a cap on it. Our people were doing it with a hide and a couple of sticks a very long time before anybody sold a chimney cap. And you need to understand the draft as a loop, not as a hole. Smoke does not leave because it wants to. Smoke leaves because air is coming in somewhere else and pushing it out. If you seal that lodge up perfectly tight and then light a fire, the smoke has nothing pushing it, and it comes right back down in your face. So there is always a low opening and always a high opening, and the fire pulls cool air in low and pushes warm smoke out high all night long. That is the loop. Now I am going to say something plain, and I want you to take it seriously because everything else in this video is old knowledge, and this part is new knowledge that the old ones did not have, and it would have saved some of them. Any fire burning in an enclosed space makes carbon monoxide. It has no color, and it has no smell, and it does not make you cough. It makes you sleepy, and it makes you a little confused, and then it makes you dead. And people die of it in this country every winter in campers and cabins and garages. A fire that is choked down, a fire smoldering on damp wood, and a smoke hole you covered up because you were cold. That is the exact recipe. So, never bank a fire down and cover the vent. Never. If you build any version of this, and I hope you do, go buy a battery-powered carbon monoxide alarm and put it in there. They cost about $20. That is the cheapest $20 you will ever spend. And I would not teach this without telling you. And notice something. Everything we have built so far is about keeping heat from leaving. We have not made any yet. So now let us talk about the fire, and then about the thing that was actually doing more heating than the fire ever did. The hearth is a shallow bowl scooped into the floor, ringed with stone. Not a big bonfire ring, something you could reach across. The stone matters. Stone is mass, same as the earth. It soaks up heat while the fire's going, and then it hands that heat back out into the room for hours after the last flame is gone, which means the middle of the night, which is exactly when you need it. You burn hardwood and you burn it down to coals, and then you work off the coals. Coals are steady, coals are nearly smokeless, and coals put out heat you can regulate. A tall flame is mostly light and mostly loss, and it drags a column of your warm air straight up and out that smoke hole. And the fire was cooking all day, every day. A pot of beans or corn simmering on those coals from morning to night is a heater that also happens to be supper. That is what the old ways looked like when you actually watch them. One thing doing 3 jobs and nothing wasted. But here's what nobody counts, and it is the number that made me stop and sit down the first time I worked it out. You're a heater right now. A grown person sitting still, doing nothing at all, puts out somewhere around the heat of a 100-watt light bulb. About 100 watts, just breathing. Get up and move around, and it is more. Now put 10 people in a lodge, 10 of them, which is an ordinary family with grandparents and children in it. That is 1,000 watts of steady heat that never quits, never needs wood, and does not go out at 3 in the morning. That is a space heater running full tilt 24 hours a day, all winter. 10 people, 1,000 watts. Add the dogs sleeping against the wall. On the plains, in a real blizzard, the horses came into the entryway passage, and a horse is a furnace with hair on it. Then you cover all of it with buffalo robes, up on that bench 18 inches off the floor, sleeping in the warm layer instead of the cold one. And down under the floor, there's a cache pit, dug and lined and covered, holding selu, which is our word for corn, along with beans and dried squash and dried meat, all of it sitting at that same steady 50 degrees, keeping all winter without one thing done to it. That is a house that heats itself, feeds itself, and stores itself. And every bit of that, every stick of wood, every foot of grass, all of that mass and all those people, all of it can be thrown away through one opening in about 4 seconds if you build the door the way a cabin door gets built. Which brings me to the thing I promised you at the start. Here is what a door actually does, and almost nobody thinks about it. When it is warm inside and cold outside, and you open a door, 2 things happen at the same time in the same doorway, going opposite directions. Warm air, which is light, pours out the top half of that opening. Cold air, which is heavy, pours in across the bottom half. You can see it with a candle. Hold a candle up high in an open doorway in January and the flame leans outside. Hold that same candle down at your ankles in the same doorway, and it leans back into the house. Out the top, in the bottom, both at once. That is not a leak. That is a pump, and it runs every single time somebody opens that door. So, a cabin with a door in the wall dumps a good share of its heat every time a man goes out for wood. 20 trips a day, and you have emptied the place 20 times. And the stove spends the whole winter refilling what the door threw away. Our people did 2 things about that, and the second one is the one I have been holding. The first thing is that the door never opened onto the weather at all. The entrance was at the end of a covered passage, 10 to 15 feet long, framed and grassed and earthed over exactly like the lodge itself, with a hide hanging over the outside end and another hide hanging over the inside end. You come in, you drop the outer hide behind you, and only then do you lift the inner one. You're never open at both ends at the same time. That is an airlock. Our people were building airlocks out of willow and hide and sod on the northern plains before anybody on this earth had a word for it. But the second thing is the one that does the real work, and it is so simple it sounds like nothing. The floor of that passage runs lower than the floor of the room. You go down, then you go along, then you come up into the house. Now think about what that does with the 2 things we already know. Cold air is heavy, warm air is light. Cold air cannot climb. That cold air outside can come in under the hide all at once. It runs down the slope of that passage, and it lies in the bottom of it in a pool, and there it stops, because there is nothing on this earth that is going to lift cold air up over a step to get into your room. It has no reason to go up. It just sits, and your warm air is doing the same thing in reverse. It is up at the ceiling, where warm air always goes, which is above the level of that doorway. There is no opening up there for it to run out of. It has nowhere to go. It stays. You have built a bowl that holds warmth and a drain that holds cold, and they both run all night in the dark while everybody is asleep, using nothing, with no moving parts, and they will keep doing it for as long as that building stands. That is a cold trap. It is the exact same idea as the trap under your kitchen sink, where a dip in the pipe holds water and stops the smell from coming back up. Our people just did it with cold instead of water, and they were doing it a very long time ago. This is also, and I want you to hear this, the actual reason a snow house works. Everybody thinks it is the ice. It is not the ice. It is that the entrance tunnel goes down and then comes back up into a raised sleeping platform, so the cold pools below and the warm sits above, and a family in there with one small oil lamp lives at 40 degrees while it is 40 below on the other side of the wall. Same law. Cold air is heavy. That is the whole trick, and once you know it, you will see it everywhere. So if you build nothing else from this video, build this. Drop the floor of your entry about 2 feet below the floor of the room. 2 feet. Keep the passage low and narrow so there is less of it to fill. Put something over each end, even a heavy blanket, and come up a step into your living space. You can do it in a root cellar dug into a bank. You can do it in a storm cellar. You can do it in a shop with a north wall banked in dirt. My grandmother had a saying that the smartest thing in a house is the thing you never notice, and she was talking about a doorway when she said it. And that is the kind of thing my grandmother handed me for free, standing in a doorway like it was nothing at all. There are 101 of them in the book, written out plain, so they do not die with me. The Native American way, $17, marked down from $47. 17. That is less than 1 month of what a leaky house costs you in propane. And this is the kind of knowledge that stays with you the rest of your life and then goes on to your grandchildren after you. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you are watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. So there it is. The ground is already 50 degrees. You pick a south slope up out of the cold drainage. You dig around and let a wood frame carry every ounce of that roof. You put a foot of grass under the dirt because the grass is what holds the heat. You keep the fire small and the vent honest, and then you build a doorway that goes down before it goes up. Now tell me something in the comments. Is there a root cellar, a storm cellar, a dugout, or a soddy anywhere in your family's history? And what did your people use it for? Half of America had 1-2 generations ago, and most of them are filled in and forgotten now. If yours is still there, I want to hear about it. And if your grandmother kept something particular down in hers, tell me that too. I read every single one. Next time, I'm going to show you the winter bread our people made out of a tree. Not from a nut and not from a berry. From the inner bark of a pine, peeled at the right season, dried, and ground into a flour that carried whole families through the months when there was nothing else. And I will show you how to take it without ever killing the tree. Watto, my friends, that means thank you. Walk easy, and I'll see you down the trail.